welcome to yet another video. I am so humbled by your continuous support. Please keep liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and coming back for more. Let's learn about God together. Love you. So according to the title of today, it's about the 10 commandments, and this video I'm thinking of doing it as a series. So I'll do #1 up to 10. And the reason is because I'm thinking of doing it not just as reading it like how I've been doing, but just expanding on it to make sure that we understand the consequences that follow if we do not obey God's commandments. So I'll start by reading it because I don't want my time to just go so much. So the 10 commandments come from the book of Deutronomy, chapter 5 from verse 1 to 22, but today we'll read from verse 1 to verse 7 because that's the first part of it. So it says, Moses summoned all Israel and said, "Hear, O Israel, the decrees and the laws I declare in your hearing today. Learn them and be sure to follow them. The Lord made a covenant with us at Horeb. It was not with our ancestors that the Lord made this covenant, but with us, with all of us who are alive here today, all of us. So the Lord spoke to you face to face out of the fire on the mountain. At that time, I stood between the Lord and you to declare to you the word of the Lord, because you were afraid of the fire and did not go up the mountain." And he said, this is now Moses reading to them, reading to us. So verse 6, it says, "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me." So I had to look up the word God in Google. I had to Google it so that we can understand the meaning. And in the definition, a God with a small g, or a deity, oh Jesus, a deity, not a deity, is a supernatural being considered divine or sacred. Forgive me about those noises. So a God is a supernatural being, and a supernatural being, that means that we can't really see it. We have to believe that it exists, like how we believe that our God Jehovah exists. That is the same thing about believing in a God or a deity. You have to keep your faith there. And there's one thing I learned about devil and God. These two, they respect altars, and these two, they respect faith. You can have the altar there, but if you don't believe that is actually an altar, and if you don't do anything to it, then it is just a building, right? But if that altar is dedicated to a certain supreme being, now that is where the worshiping comes in, because you have to be actively participating in that altar. You have to be committed to that altar. You have to express your commitments, like maybe doing some sacrifices, like giving your all there. That is what that is defined as worshiping. And what happens if we worship another God? What happens? That is the question that most of us ask ourselves. Like, yes, fine, I decided to say there's no Jesus, there's no God who saved me from slavery. So I really want us to talk about the consequences. And please forgive me about the background noises, because I'm actually doing this video in my room. So yeah, so just go straight to the consequences. But this is where people should understand that every single thing, not only people, don't quote me wrong, but all of us are also a person. This is where we should understand, in every single thing that we do, there is a consequence. If you worship another God, but instead, worshiping another God instead of Jehovah, instead of the I am that I am, instead of Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Nissi, El Shaddai, if you do not worship him fully, there is a consequence. And what do I mean by worshiping? If you have ever bowed down to another god, this is where maybe you really reached at that time in your life and you feel like, you know what, I should just surrender and say there's no Jesus, just for you to get that food or cloth or anything else that you might have missed then. And you missed the part where God says, sometimes I just want to see how faithful you can be, how much of a faithful servant you can be. So the consequences that come when you bow down to another god, they are very clear. You get an altar of infirmity. The altar of infirmity strikes your family, and this is where you just get incurable diseases. It's either mental or physical. An altar of infirmity strikes either mental or physical part of your being. So you get incurable diseases, like the chronic ones, the ones that are called chronic in the hospitals, like the cancer, diabetes, pressure. These are things that we cannot control. These are things that are actually inherited, and every other inherited disease that you know, right? So when it comes to the mental part, you get someone, maybe there's madness, people who they grow mad. This shows that someone somewhere in your family has bowed down to another god, because that is the only consequence that comes, right? When you bow down and worship another god, that is what happens. And this attacks generations. If you continue reading Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 1 to 22, it will tell you that my anger will reach the third up to the fourth generation. So you can imagine that this altar of infirmity will strike generations and generations and generations of your family up to the fourth generation. And no one really knows what happens past fourth generation, because I don't think so many people will live to tell. But what happens is already in the Bible, right? If someone along the way, let's say maybe in the second generation or in the third generation, they realize this very fast and they come and they amend it. How do they amend it? They come, they start worshiping God in truth and in spirit. God separates them. That is where like the punishment reaches. The rest would not say that, yes, God, we have recognized our mistakes. Them, they will suffer. But this one who has decided to follow Christ, as for him and his house, or as for her and her house, they will follow Christ till the latter days. Yeah, these ones, they become saved. So I guess we have understood that in every single thing that we do here on earth, there is a consequence. If we worship another God, there is a consequence of infirmity that is just awaiting us. And trust me, when you get that cancer and you are very rich, right? You leave your children, you leave their children. Sometimes they even sell their houses, they sell their cars, they sell everything that they have just to maintain you in the hospital, where you will not even get healed. This is an incurable disease, right? So you leave them again, starting from the bottom. Now they start hustling now, and in that time, maybe you can get, maybe these children, they become overwhelmed with stress, they start questioning themselves. But if you can avoid all this by worshiping the right God, worshiping Jehovah, and keeping his commandments and meditating on them day and night, you can imagine the kind of life you'd have built for your kids, and for your generation and for your family and for your legacies. They will always say, our grandmother, our grandfather, our great, that story will be passed on to generations. Because the minute, like for example, I believe in Jesus Christ, right? I will pass it on to my children, their children, their children's children, because I know the benefit. The benefit of following this is because God protects you from all infirmity. God protects you. So when you don't follow God, you get the out of infirmity striking. But if you follow God, God protects you from that. So that's just it. I can't wait to do the next video. Hope you'll come back. Please like, comment, subscribe, share. I love you so much. God bless you.